Hey, Tom, do we have a quorum? Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. We've established a quorum and we've got people online. And for the sake of saving everybody's time, let's call this meeting to order. And first item we'll cover is agenda approval. If we could get a motion and
Chuck Faribault, City of Colorado Springs, move we approve the agenda as submitted.
a second on that.
Dave Betzler with NEPCO, second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? There are none, so we have an agenda. Okay, moving on, approval of the minutes. If you've all had an opportunity to read that, I'll take a motion at this time to accept the minutes from last meeting.
Kathy Heisey Callahan, I move approval of the minutes for the last meeting.
Thank you, Kathy. Do we have a second?
Gary Sugared at large, second.
Thank you, Gary. Have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes from last meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, there are none. Tom, do you have anybody online for public comment or questions? Okay, and the audience, either of you have any comments, questions? Okay, all right, well, we're moving right along here. We'll move on into action items. Looking forward to hearing from Danelle.
Hey, thank you. So today we have the Unified Planning Work Program. We did bring this to you as an information item last month. Today we will be asking you to have a recommendation to the board to release this document for public comment. This document is a federally required report that tells the public, as well as our board and our committees, the work activities that our transportation group here at PPACG is going to undertake with our federal funding that comes to us through FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, and the FHWA, the Federal Highways Administration. This is a 2-year document typically. However, we do update it every year because of funding changes. And sometimes also, task priorities change as well. So this year is actually an update to the original fiscal years 26 through 27 UPWP. This year, as I mentioned, since we're doing a mid-cycle update, the primary change is really to the financials due to our updated funding amounts, as well as our forecasted rollovers of funding that we did not spend this year. And because those numbers are in flux a little bit as we spend money, we're also pursuing some funding from the state that we may or may not get some of. Those may change again before final adoption, but they are as good as we can get them at this point in time. In addition, in that document, we've kind of streamlined some of our work elements. We used to have 3 different work elements that all essentially were regional planning. One was specific to safety and one was specific to mobility. But because they cross over so much, it was difficult to kind of track it financially that way. So we consolidated those into one work element. The second significant change was that we added a work element specifically for complete streets planning. And that is, again, a change to make it easier for our financial tracking. Per our federal regulations, we're required to spend no less than 2.5% of our FHWA planning funds towards complete streets efforts. And so we work with our local jurisdictions to kind of say, hey, here's what we're working on. What kinds of things would you like to see? And we have a fairly wide definition of things that can qualify as complete streets planning. This year, we're actually, Lisa is in charge of updating our mobility guide and doing some enhancements to that as part of our complete streets effort. And if you're not familiar with complete streets, it's really a planning approach that supports roadways that are supportive of multiple transportation modes or all transportation users. Let's see. For some highlights for what's really in the UPWP, so some highlights of what work we'll be working on in the next year or so. We'll be continuing our regional freight plan, which you'll hear about a little bit about later in this meeting. We are also starting on our long-range transportation cycle. So our last long-range transportation plan was adopted in February of 2025. Our next one will be adopted no later than February of 2030. So we're starting some preliminary activities for that plan. That includes our congestion management process, which you'll hear about in the next few months. It involves initiating our regional transit plan with Mountain Metropolitan Transit, our specialized transportation plan, which Lisa will head up and looks at that kind of specialty transit or transportation for disabled folks and for seniors. And we're also doing some public outreach activities. So right now we're developing some fact sheets that will hopefully help with some education to the public. We'll also be doing a long-range transportation plan survey for the public and some of those kinds of initial activities to get the LRTP started. At this point, happy to answer any questions you might have. But yeah, again, today we're just looking for a recommendation to the board to release for public comment.
I do have one question. When I read through my packet, I didn't see any significant change. Is there something that did change that I should make note of? Or that
No, there's no changes from when it was an information item
Okay,
last month.
just wanted to be sure because I didn't
Yeah.
see anything, but might have missed something.
No, thank you for asking. No.
Anyone else with a question? We don't want to let Danelle off the hook. Okay, I see no questions online. Okay, well, at this point, we'll take a motion to move this forward to the board.
Chuck Theobald, City of Colorado Springs, I move that we recommend that this be released for public comment. Is that the right form?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck. We have a second.
Kathy Heisey Callahan, I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Okay, we've had a motion, a second. Any additional comments, questions? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? There are none. Thank you, Danelle.
Thank you.
I caught, did someone have something to say at the very end? I missed that. Okay, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I am Lisa Gagnon. I'm the transit planner here at PPACG, and I'm going to talk about the questions that we've had about the Title VI plan from last month. Just a refresher, this plan was I was on action item last month and it was approved to be forwarded to the board. It was not forwarded just because we still had some questions here in the CAC. So I just wanted to answer those questions now before showing it to the board. So we have it as an informational item, not to go for approval, just to answer the questions. And the questions were about the validity of the census for the Air Force Academy area and the Fort Carson area relating to income levels and no car household and the demographic index. Just short answer, the census data is correct. But I have William Mast online. He is the GIS manager, just to go explain it a little more in depth and how the census got their data and just the, I guess, overall correctness of the data.
William, you're on if you can hear.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so Lisa came to me and said there were some questions where the data comes from for these maps. So we pulled the data from the census, specifically the American Community Survey. The reason we pull from the ACS, again, the American Community Survey, is because it's the same source of information that is used by our partner agencies as well as the State Demographer's Office for its assessment. So it just makes sure that when we're running analysis and comparing it against the state agencies as well as some of our member governments and partner agencies, we're looking at the same data and then going from there. So I think one of the questions that came up though was poverty level, and the thing to remember is that when the census pulls this through ACS, it's based on surveys. It's not a full mandatory survey like the decennial census. The ACS starts surveying people randomly in order to sample based on county and census tract. And then it uses that with the decennial census data to try and come up with estimates. But what it is surveying is really, it's strictly income, and that's it. So it doesn't consider things like if, your conditions of living. It doesn't consider if you have, non-taxable income sources that have come in. It doesn't consider things like scholarships, if you've got an allowance for housing, things of that nature. It does really only focus on whether or not you have income. Now, it does consider retirement income sources. That's part of the question. But again, if it's something that isn't typically taxed, then it's nothing that's going to be included in that survey. And so what you see is it's based on percentage. And so the one that's really highlighted, I think, that stood out was, of course, up on the Air Force Academy. So there are 2 census tracts up there on the Air Force Academy. And that northern one is where the cadets live. Now, most of the cadets would actually, if they were reporting, will probably, when they file any income taxes, if they had any, it would probably be based on wherever they're out of, their home place. However, not everybody does. Now, it shows a high percentage, but the reality is there's only 47 people that were in that tract that had that area for living. And the only thing that's up there's no base housing in that tract. So we're not talking families of people living on the academy. That's actually in the one down below. This would really just be for the cadet dorms, which is why the sample was so low. Only 47 people. But of them, roughly 30% had income that was going to be less than about $16,000 a year for an individual, which would make sense if they're a cadet. So that's where that comes from. The rest of the values, again, around the area reported as a percent, but if there are questions about any of the specific tracks, I actually have the data, including the census tables up in front of me, and I'm happy to dive into that.
Thank you. Chuck? Yep. That last meeting as well. Okay, just saw. Welling, I know you're online. I don't know if you're able to talk, but does that answer your questions?
Well, sort of, because Will is to hit on the same thing. Cadets and midshipmen earn 35% of O1 pay, which is $1,333 a month. They would fall into that. And 3/4 of the cadets will not have cars because you're not allowed to on that. And with everything else that had, the questions I had about below poverty level, demographic, no vehicles, what that meant, what that is that the census is using an improper variable when it comes to measuring the total population. Okay, it doesn't take into account the military. Any military academy, including VMI and the Citadel, any recruit training center or a recruit depot center or anything like that will experience this same very thing. And it's PPACG did a beautiful job of putting this together. My question's answered because it means I think the census did not do their job right. And maybe we should pass something up to the board to say, hey, this data connect, if you don't know what you're looking at, what's underneath that, because I took a satellite image of the academy and then overlaid it on this. And as Will stated, right on target, hey, that's the cadet area. So just want to say that from that station. I did notice that Cheyenne Mountain Station is not included in this but it's part of the city, but it wasn't, census wasn't included in that. And one of the things about age under 64, in the military, when you hit 55 years of age, you're generally 30 plus years into the service. And unless you walk on water and you're a flag or an E9, you're not going to be in there long. So you'll see the lower percentage for 64 in that. And so, yeah, I saw it. I have no questions on it. It's just that I think the census is using an improper measurement for what it's trying to achieve, given that the population is so diverse in its living conditions. But I just want to thank Will for digging into that. But I found out, $1,333 per month, and you don't get all that because it's charged for everything else. The only thing, Will, that I had a real question about is when I looked at disabilities, the academy had a high disability rate. If you have a disability that prevents you from working, you are released from military service. And I don't know where that came from. And I want to ask you about that. But they do have a lot of people on crutches at the academy because they're highly involved in competitive sports and they get injured very easily. I was one of those guys when I fell 20 feet off of a gymnastics rope. So anyway, that's all I got, sir. That was it. But well done, Will.
Well,
I think the explanation was clear and that the census is applying correctly their criteria to an area that is hard to meet its norms. But if there are only 47 people that are in the respondent group, then a couple of people on crutches, as Welling says, would lead to a high disability rate, just by the nature of the population that's being analyzed. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Ed Well here. I just got one, Welling Clark, Pasco County. I just got one more thing to say. What just was brought up was a very good idea. How many people were in that census track? Was it 4 or was it like 400? If it was 47, that dark green track at Air Force, you look at the track right below it, you probably got a couple hundred down there. So it's the color and the size is not representative of the proportional weight of the survey. So that's something to think about, but I think that's a census issue. And
The darker census tract that covers the cadet area.
no argument there. I'm just saying that dark area has 47 respondents. That light green area below it maybe has 10 times as much, but the census does not break out the weight of each area. And so no arguments or anything like that. I was just, what I found, Will was right on target with presenting it. And also by knowing that was 47 people, it's like, that's a very small number for a very large area. Makes it look like it's really bad. All things being even. Okay, out.
percentages. Okay, thank you, Welling. Thank you, Chuck. William, you have anything else you need to add or want to add?
No, I'm just here. If there are any other questions or if anybody would like further explanation, I'm happy to dive in.
Questions in the room? Seeing anyone else online? Okay, Lisa, William, thank you very much. And I think that covers what we need to have a vote for next time. Okay. Okay, I didn't know if we had to approve it to go to the board or not. Okay, okay.
Yeah, we did it. We voted on it last month. And
Pending the-
there's
pending
there's
the
nothing.
results of this, okay,
Yep. So now we'll move it
Gotcha.
to the board for July.
okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Josh?
Hi, good afternoon, CAC. Today we'll have our consultants, Cambridge Systematics, present on the draft regional freight plan. You guys have seen them and the consultants a couple times along with the kind of sections of the plan. But today we're bringing the the initial draft to the committee, which was included in your packet. So following today's discussion and feedback, staff is anticipating to bring the freight plan back to CAC next month for recommendation to the board of directors to release for public comment. So at this time, I will hand it over to our consultants, Richard Driscoll and Christina Leach.
Hi, yep, I'll be kind of guiding this presentation today. Thank you for putting the presentation. So as Josh had mentioned, you all have seen the regional freight plan kind of come together over the last handful of months. And now that we have a complete draft of it, we wanted to bring it back to you all, kind of just review the general content. I believe you all have been provided a sample of it or as part of your handouts. And so we just want to spend a little bit of time going over some of the things that we had discussed over the course of the last handful of months. And then again, looking at the general content. So you can go to the next slide there. Actually, you can probably skip ahead 2 slides. I think that this one is, yep, there you go. So the plan outline generally follows it follows as an introduction, a presentation of the existing conditions, a discussion about the outreach and engagement that we performed. We talk about corridors and projects that are freight relevant, and then finalize with the prioritization framework. What we're trying to do is first present just what the document is going to be talking about, move into the existing conditions, and actually provide the context and the data element that's going to be driving a lot of that underlying decision-making information. Then we go into the outreach element where we're talking about how the engagement with you all, the members of the public, members of the private sector communities, to kind of provide us a sense of, okay, what is important for the region, and how does that translate to freight in the region? And so that outreach is really a core element of this entire plan, was really getting a sense of what's important, what are our goals, what are our values, and how can we measure those values. And so the projects and corridors kinds of speaks a little bit to informing of what kinds of projects are ongoing or could be potential projects that would be impactful to freight, things like the Southern Colorado Rail Park as an example. One of the elements that we wanted to incorporate was that piece into this document, and so that gets incorporated in there. And then finally, the prioritization framework. This is like the real meat of the delivery of this plan. What we're looking to do here is use that outreach, use those existing conditions to kind of drive, okay, what are the goals, what are the objectives, and what are the performance measures to kind of measuring those objectives as we go forward. This ultimately comes together as a toolkit for you all to utilize in your decision making, so you can remember, you can reflect on, okay, what were we talking about as priorities as it related to freight? What did the freight community say was going to be important to them going forward? And what are some general trends also that can help inform our project programming decision making? You can go to the next slide. So this is the prioritization framework. We've shown this a couple of times. I just wanted to show it one more time, just as a reflection. This kind of lives as almost like a checklist, one pager almost, wherein you can kind of in one swoop see the goal areas, the individual objectives under those goal areas, and then how you can measure progress in those specific objectives. We had in the past had the workshop that helped to inform what the performance measures and what these objectives will look like. And so I want to reflect on that for a moment. Thank you all for all of your input. It was really important in drafting this document and drafting this prioritization framework. And again, this is going to be a resource for you all to use going forward in your decision making. But you all have seen this before. You all kind of informed it, and so I want to just give out that thank you for that element. You can go to the next slide. I think this is our last slide. Just kind of reflecting a little bit on what the deliverables of this plan will ultimately be. One will be the final plan document. This is the document that's going to live, top to bottom. I believe that's the one that's also included in your packet that discusses that introduction through prioritization framework approach, where we're just really getting into the detail, talking a lot about the existing conditions, talking a lot about the outreach, and then giving that final element there. The additional resources that we'll be delivering is GIS mapping tools. So we're pulling those performance measures into a tool that will deliver as part of this element. We're also delivering grant funding resources. What we've done is reflected on what programs are directed towards freight that would be relevant when considering different projects and how to fund those projects. And so as part of this, we'll be delivering some grant funding resources to help guide decision making as to which grants you can pursue depending on the nature of the projects that you're programming. And then lastly, a checklist table item. It really will live somewhat as that table that we had that I showed the slide previous. Just be an opportunity for you all to, in one brief page, kind of reflect on, okay, what were the priorities that we had kind of come up with? What were our goal areas? And how in making a decision about what types of project gets programmed, how can I reflect on what we know the freight needs of the region are, and so that checklist kind of provides you that outlook. We wanted to make this extremely decision maker friendly. That was kind of at the core of this project from the beginning. And so I think that with all of your input and the input that we've gotten from the public generally, this really has kind of come together as a really curated document for the region and the unique circumstances of the region. And so with that, I think we have a handful of next steps here on the next slide. So we're bringing this all to you as an information element right now. I encourage you all to take some time and reflect on any other element that you'd like to kind of see in the document. Really focusing on that prioritization framework and outreach element, seeing as the outreach element kind of is a reflection of what we heard from our engagement efforts, and then the prioritization framework as the culmination of the whole document, the data-driven element, and the stakeholder engagement piece. We'll then come back next month to seek approval to move to the public comment period, in which case we'll do the public comment period after that, suppose we move to approval. And then finally, we'll develop the final plan document, tidying up any other loose ends, formatting things, things of that nature, and then move to adoption, in the next few months here. So again, this is just an information item, but we wanted to give you an opportunity to reflect on, hey, this is coming up relatively soon. This is kind of your opportunity to make any additional comments or thoughts, over the course of the next month, thinking through where we were, how far we've come, and then what's left to do. So, yeah, any comments or questions I'm happy to take right now. Otherwise, I'll be listening in for the rest of this call. So if you wanted to, reach out and yell at me, say, Richard, help me with this, I'll be here.
Have a question.
Yes.
You knew I was going to have a question. Chuck Theobald, City of Colorado Springs. Is it appropriate to ask about content now, or are we just, so there were two sections that when I read through, I thought lacked for future viewing.
Mhm.
Both of them in section 3.6, 3.6.4 on page 175, front range passenger rail refers to the Colorado connection or connector service that is some time from implementation.
Yeah.
But it notes that additional sightings and passing sections of track may be necessary.
Mhm.
Is it premature to start to identify where that's likely to have to happen? Not that there would be planning or expenditure of money, but just to put it on the map and say, this is where we're going to do it, so that we're ready if and when the front range passenger rail comes along to make that an efficient and effective service.
We can reflect on that with our rail partners. That this was largely in response to some of the things I think we heard from, it was either the TAC or this group here, about incorporating that service element into this plan, knowing that rail freight is kind of an important element of growth for any region really, but also for this region. I I don't know. I don't think that it's necessarily inappropriate to reflect now on where those sightings might occur. But this is obviously would be in conjunction um, uh, with what their what the approach would be from the Colorado that the connector service. So I don't know. So, and I'm not entirely sure if they have those planned out or not. We can review that, but I think we can reflect on that with our rail partners. I don't know if Christina, you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I
And
think since,
I think John
since-
can help.
Please, John, go for it.
Yeah, let me see. This is my recollection of it to see if I help you out. And I think you've got like 85% of it there, Richard. But my recollection was a lot of that came up when we were chatting with the railroad folks, the freight railroad folks. And the railroad folks are like, look, we have only so many places where we can pass each other. And again, I don't remember the numbers, so Christina and Richard, if you remember the exact numbers, feel free to pipe in. But they were like, as it is now, the length of those passing areas are woefully insufficient, and that you have to go down like an extra 7 miles before you can actually do it. So that makes a very inefficient system. So where this came from, and again, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but do so gently because I have a little bit of an ego and I'm sensitive, is that the railroad folks are saying, yeah, we need to account for, even though this is a freight study, we need to account for what front range passenger rail will do and what the capacity they will sort of take up. And so one of the big questions is, where are the stations and everything else? So we cannot plan from the freight perspective until we know where the passenger perspective is going to happen and how it's going to happen. But once that happens, and how many stations happen in El Paso County, how many stations happen, down in Pueblo, once they have that picture of where the front range passenger rail is going to happen, because again, that is a very time sensitive sort of thing. You don't want to hop on a passenger train and be stuck at a siding waiting for a freight train to go by, right? So you want to make sure that that is something that is given priority on the tracks and can get to point A to point B quickly. And from there, if I remember correctly, Richard, the freight guys were like, yeah, and then when we'll want to plan from there. So Chuck, before you go, did I get that sort of right, Richard?
Yeah, you absolutely did. I think it was 3. It's all of the sightings in the PPACG region are too short. That's included in the plan document. I believe it's 3 of them. It may only be 2. But yes, you are correct. That was part of that entire conversation as well. That ultimately the inclusion of that element in and I forget the subsection was 3.6.4. It had like a specific name to it, but the inclusion of that element was to show that we understand that there is a coordination effort that needs to happen as that continues to be a reality, the front range passenger rail. And so, not necessarily highlighting it as like this upper level tiered thing necessarily, but having it incorporated in the freight document was kind of an important element of, we're prepared to respond to that when that kind of arises. But I do think it valuable to reflect on that with some of our freight partners as well. I'm taking notes on that just to see what the reach of being able to identify need for additional sightings kind of looks like at this time. So I think that's a great comment.
And
yeah,
Christina,
I do too. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, hey, Christina, we cut you off apparently a second time. I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to jump in. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just thinking maybe we reach out to Front Range Passenger Rail and just see what information they can give us to add in here. I don't know where exactly they're at with their sightings. I know they don't ever want to get anything published too soon. Just because, you know, they have to vet the whole process of the locations and everything. But I think we could definitely reach out and just, you know, see where they're at and see what other information we could add. So a good follow-up
Agreed.
item.
And again, the level of this plan, just having the mention of we need to do sightings is going to be good enough in the future for someone to point at that page of this plan and say, we're included in the plan, therefore we're eligible for funding. So while at the end product might not have the specifics you might want, it will be specific enough to meet the criterion for the purpose of the study. I used some very big words there. I'm very proud.
That was very impressive.
So
That's
did you have other questions? I didn't mean to cut you off.
just as a observationally, recognizing that freight transportation makes money and passenger transportation is subsidized. And if you've ever ridden the Amtrak, you know that in many corridors, freight does actually, in fact, take priority over passenger rail because they own the tracks. But for the plans that the Front Range Passenger Rail has put forward, their station timings are going to require a much higher level of cooperation, and that's my concern that they get pulled into this conversation as well. They have published where they intend to put stations, recognizing that virtually everything they've published is vaporware isn't the right word, wishful thinking. But it is something that if we're going to mention it here, if we can be sure that they like what's being said and any level of specificity that they're ready to share is included in the transportation plan, I think that would be fabulous.
Absolutely. I think this is fantastic feedback.
Dave Betzler, NEPCO, just sort of an observation, I think, or maybe it's a little bit of a question too. It's like, this is a regional initiative on the part of the State Department of Transportation and a whole bunch of others. And it's a matter of, you know, is there a similar long-range transportation plan with Douglas County, for example, and other counties that are actually working the same thing? And what are they including in their plan, or at least their description of the FREX and the COCO or whatever it's going to be called? That would be a useful thing, I think, just for us to have a little bit of an insight into how fast they're going. They may have much better granular data and insight than we do. So it's just one of those things, observation, I guess. At some point, we'd probably like to get an insight into that if that's feasible.
Excellent for just, what is it, encouraging or supplementing or, fostering that inter-regional conversation as well. So, yeah.
Welling.
Okay. This kind of goes in relationship to the COCO versus the freight. A few years ago, I took a ride with a bunch of BNSF executives on their trains through Glacier National Park. And one of the things that they said the railroad industry is trying to do is go to double tracks so you don't have the issue of having to pull off and wait for oncoming trains. It also mitigates head-ons. In this, and I don't know if this is even the appropriate place to bring it up, but is there any wordage in there where they're looking at expanding to double tracks in this COCO initiative? Or they
Oh, okay. So within the context of the COCO initiative, I'm not entirely sure. In our discussions with the rail, stakeholder group broadly, that did not sound like a priority necessarily. Their main priority, and I'll reflect again on what John had just said, was enhancing those sidings to be comprehensive and be able to actually support some of those longer trains that roll through, or at least kind of with an eye on that. I'm not sure in the context of Cocoa, whatever we're calling it, I guess. Though I did not get the sense, speaking from just what the sense that I was getting as when we were speaking with those private stakeholders, that was a priority. That it was, single track was still for certainly at least the foreseeable future, for the timeline that this plan would be reflective of. I think 2045 or 2050.
On the front
Yeah.
range passenger rail side, there's been no talks for double tracks. It's all been
Mm-hmm.
sliding. So that has not been discussed.
And-
I think that's their plan.
And I think to a certain degree here, we may be getting too deep into this since it's
Yeah, okay,
preliminary.
no,
And
thanks so much.
John
You
has
answered the
already
question.
pointed out that the funding will be answered with what
Yeah,
we're doing at
and
this
also
point.
deciding station locations, and then as PPACG, we don't have the locations for the sliding racks or sliding tracks, but I think the engineers at CDOT and Front Range Passenger Rail, but definitely do at this point. So I would recommend reaching out to them if that data is available. But like John said, I think just mentioning it would be sufficed. But
Yeah, and I
we
think
don't
for
have the
the
data, but
purposes of
definitely
this
CDOT
plan,
does.
or we need to-
Yeah,
we don't
I
need to go
agree.
any deeper.
Yep.
But John, go ahead.
Well, I did want to kind of take one step back to your question as far as what other regions are doing. If you go up to the border of the PPACG NPO boundary, or we border with Dr. Cobb. So the Denver Regional Council of Governments, they have their own freight plan. In fact, we had an industry roundtable not too long ago where there was a panel discussion with North Front Range and Dr. Cog, and Christina actually led that panel, where we talked about how we have all these different plans, but how do they all interweave and connect as part of the state freight plan? So we are talking to each other. We are making sure we don't have one train track over here and the other one going there and go, well, no wonder we can't drive the Golden Spike. We're making sure that we're connecting. So that has been addressed. And then back to the Welling, I think your bigger question on the whole sort of double tracking. Yes, I have heard that from a national perspective, a lot of the railroads are looking to double track. But again, and Lisa, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know the details of this, but Front Range Passenger Rail very rarely is going to own its own track. It's going to use the existing track that is owned by, what are we here?
Burlington North, Santa Fe, and Union Pacific owns the tracks.
Yeah.
And they've been in conversations for years with negotiating
Yeah.
and stuff.
And so Welling, that's going to be a business decision where they will decide, does it make money for us to do double track, or does it make more money for us to have something wait on a siding and go through? So that's going to be a business decision that's made in Omaha or wherever the railroad is located. And again, I think the state of Colorado in general, as well as PPACG, we're just along for the ride, depending on what system the railroads want to put in. The last thing I want to say is, yeah, again, if I've got a coal, you're right. They're making more money on the coal than the people. However, that being said, as long as they're leasing the track, and I can't get someone to want to ride the train if they have to wait 8 hours for a piece of coal to go by them. The piece of coal doesn't care. So again, part of that bigger business model and business decision, this was conversations I had back when I worked in Arizona, is that yes, the freight can still be accommodated. It could run overnight, while passenger rail is more of the thing that's going to be running during the day. And again, has to be an attractive product for it to compete. And I think the folks here understand that. So I think they're going to address some of your concerns there.
Okay, thanks, John. The concern I had was if state government wants this railroad in place or this system in place, is it kicking anything in? Is it going to have skin in the game, to help out things? That's all I was really interested in.
Yeah, I think that's not part of what we're doing with having this freight discussion.
No,
But
concur.
yes.
I was just curious. I want to say thank you. I mean, great report right here. I'm for it.
Okay, but yeah, but as far as Front Range Passenger Rails, there's lots of different puzzle pieces to the funding picture. And so when you say, is the state kicking in money? Yes, the state is kicking in money. but then you have to say, who is the state? Ultimately, the state is us, the taxpayers, and we're kicking in from different sort of pots of money. And so, again, I think that's a more subjective thing. If I personally think it's a good idea, which I do, that doesn't mean you should, right? You'll all have your own separate criteria of how you're going to judge these things. But to specifically answer your question, Welling, yeah, the state has identified funding sources and is putting it towards that. But again, that's not really a part of what we're talking about now with the freight plan.
I'll speak to the broader question too, just just to kind of like close out the Front Range passenger rail piece. We will follow up with this because I think it's an interesting discussion, especially in the context of, how does that impact freight transportation through the region, and maybe that elevates some elements of the Southern Colorado Rail Park and things like that. So again, we will follow up with the Front Range passenger rail folks to see what additional context we can provide for that subsection. This is a great conversation.
Thank you. I agree, and I appreciate you all following up. I had the other question that I had based on reading through the draft is a couple of sections later, 3.6.6, drones and UAVs.
Yep.
That section basically says we don't have to worry about it because we've got too many military installations for it to be an effective tool. If that's a fair summary.
Yeah. I would,
my experience with Amazon and with other companies that are looking at drones for last mile delivery is that they tend to try it out first and then ask for permission and regulation later. And so if shooting them out of the sky in a trial period is our plan, then I would love to see us say that. Really, it's just to be in conversation with folks who are likely to try it to help them understand that the regional transportation plan does not foresee them using that as a large scale tool. And I don't know if it's possible to reach out to the Amazon distribution center or to other last mile carriers here. The Postal Service is probably pretty good about not breaking federal regulations, but just if there's a way to widen the conversation beyond, we don't think it's going to happen. That would seem to be prudent.
Yeah, so we actually did speak with Amazon and specifically asked them about this element. The response was very straightforward. That's not something that we're exploring at this time. That in recognition of some of the complicated elements of trying to implement it, given airspace concerns and things like that. And so, for the, within the immediate term, the next like 5 to 10 years, I would be surprised if it became a larger thing. What we could do is, I believe that there's a subsection in the outreach chapter. And if it doesn't already have that context there, with our discussion with Amazon, I'll make sure that it gets added and then kind of cross-reference back in this piece. And I think that this is also in the outreach chapter as well, just towards the end. But yeah, we'll make sure to link that back too, because we did have those talks with them, and it's just based on the complexity of the issue. It just sounded like it was a very it was just not something that they were readily pursuing in this region at this time. So, but yeah, adding that context, I think, makes a lot of sense. So we'll put that in there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And thanks for that answer, Richard. But I did want to take the opportunity to let you all know, if I had all of the money in the world, right? The freight plan would be this thick and we would cover everything in depth. But there is a limit to what I can ask the consultants to do, because apparently they don't want to work for free. I get it, gotta pay bills, buy ice cream, whatever, right? So part of my job is making sure that I cover the topics that need to get covered to make sure that we optimize funding opportunities for the region, but at the same time, understand that I have to stay within a budget. So we could have a conversation of this little section could be 5 pages, but from a paragraph to 5 pages is exponentially more expensive. And again, Richard and Christina do great work, but they do need to sort of get paid. So I have to make the decision at my level to say to Josh, hey, Josh, kind of pull them back on this and that. So I will say that you're bringing up excellent points, and you could bring up a lot of other things that you're like, well, this could be longer, you could be more. And I just wanted to let you all know that part of my job is making sure that we're optimizing the money that we have available and getting the most bang for the buck, which means some things get sort of left out. And I'm okay with that. I don't lose sleep going, man, the drone thing, that's really going to bother me, is because this is the first freight plan that we've done here at PPACG. But we will update it probably every 4 or 5 years, depending on where it falls within the cycle of the long range plan. And the cycle of the long range plan is dictated by our attainment status. And so if they make leaps and bounds advances in drone technologies, you can bet in 4 years it's going to be a much thicker section. If it sort of goes a little astray, sort of like where we were with autonomous vehicles, right? When I was doing long range plans, a report like this, and we were talking about autonomous vehicles, man, by the year 2025, it's going to be everywhere. It's going to take over. Well, you know, they don't figure out some of the like running over like people issues. There's insurance issues and then other regulatory issues. All of a sudden, autonomous vehicles sort of fall off the map, and they've gone from something that is a very big chapter to something that's a small chapter or a paragraph. That being said, something like autonomous trucks and stuff like that could be a much bigger topic, you know, where it's a whole section instead of, you know, what it is in 4 years if they conquer some of these other issues. So that's part of what I have to do, is between the consultant, between what you all are interested in, what the board wants to see, what I know we can get funding for, plus, you know, making sure that Josh as the project manager can sort of weave things in and out. That's part of why I get to stand at the podium every once in a while. So I see what you're saying. I agree, and they might be able to add a few things. I just want to temper expectations that it's not going to be a huge thing, if that makes sense.
Thank you, John. And do you have anything else, Richard? I appreciate everything you brought forward so far.
Not at all. Just to close out that drone piece as well. I like the reference to ask for forgiveness, not for permission. That gave me a good laugh, and so yeah. But we will reflect on that and see if we can bring up some cross referencing that enhances the way that this subsection reads.
Hey, Josh, do you want to wind this up?
Yeah, this was a great discussion and great points brought up by the committee. Thank you, John, and thank you to our consultants. We'll bring this back to you. Document should be a little bit more polished and maybe a little bit more content added to next month for releasing it for the vote to release, for the recommendation to release it for public comment to the board. But yeah, just want to thank the committee.
Yeah, thank you. And at this time, does anyone online have any announcements they need to make? Lisa.
I just want to say happy bike to work day. Oh, sorry, I think I cut off someone.
The whole thing's.
Oh, okay. I'll continue. Sorry about that. Happy Bike to Work Day. There was about 30 stations, a little bit over all around Colorado Springs. Great turnout from what I've been hearing. 15 pounds of bacon was served up at the Pike Ride stop. We had about 96 bikers, which I think over doubled from last year. This day is just to kind of advertise and biking, not just to work, of just having like there's more than one option than driving. Just so promoting cycling. So happy Bike to Work Day. Thank you if you participated, and thank you for whoever helped out. And that's all.
Sounds like a good day. Okay, anyone else? I can't say online anymore, so.
Yes, this is City Councilman Roland Rainey. Good
Yes, Roland.
afternoon to everyone. Just want to let everyone know that there is another vacancy at the city. So I'm currently going through the application and interview process. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll be submitting another individual to fulfill another vacancy on the CAC. If you got any questions about it, please let me know. I did see that there was a great handful of applicants, I believe well over, I think 7 or 8. But just want to let you know that that is a process that I'm currently going through with our new board and commissions representative in City Hall. And hopefully we'll have a recommendation to you in the next 2 weeks. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else? Okay, well, our next meeting will be the end of July, the last Wednesday of the month. And you'll get your agenda in time. And if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.